Hey there everyone, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. In today's video, we have a story about a person that really doesn't like Matthew Mercer or Critical Role, and just needs to tell the world. A story about a player getting physically chased out of a game of Dungeons & Dragons, and much more. But before we get to those, let's meditate with Simba to protect us from the psychic damage that these stories are sure to inflict. And if you like the video, you get advantage. Thanks, Simba. Now I think we are ready for some DnD horror stories. Matt Mercer Hater is kicked out of the game shop by Reddit user ChaosAngel07. A friend of mine, let's call her Anne, works at a game shop that recently just opened up in our city. As part of the opening, the shop had been inviting dungeon masters to both possibly host and teach newcomers how to play D&D and other tabletop RPGs. I've been running Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games for Anne and our immediate friend group for a while now, mostly several one-shots and a mini-campaign that lasted for around 20 or so sessions. She wanted to invite me and see if I was open to it, and I was more than happy to, and even a little excited. Anyways, the day of the event came, and it was quite the turnout. There were about 50 to 60 people there. Some were checking out the Magic the Gathering games, others were checking the 40k figures, and me and one other dungeon master, who we'll call Jack, were prepping and chatting in the back with battle maps and figures ready. Jack and I were visited frequently, as several people saw the sign of us teaching D&D and other tabletop RPGs. Obviously, we introduced 5th edition as a starter, since we decided that would be the easier one to talk about. For the ones looking for something else, Jack talked about Symbaroum, and I talked about the 13th Age. We mostly got little kids, and a few young adults who were interested, and we even ran some very short campaigns for them, just to give them a feel of how the game ran. All in all, they looked like they were having fun. Cue the problem, a guy we will call Dom. During a lull in the activities, I was chatting with someone who had been watching Critical Role. She had never played D&D before, but was super interested in it and was just gushing about Critical Role. There wasn't much to do, so the two of us just talked about Vox Machina and Mighty Nine. In comes Dom, out of nowhere, saying, "Matt Mercer is such a crap DM." And no, not paraphrasing here. He actually said that. Dom quickly sat down and began to go on some weird tirade about how, without Matt Mercer's figurines or battle maps, or all of this high budget stuff, he's nothing. I've had dungeon masters who can run circles around him. This caught me off guard, to say the least. Now, I will admit, I am biased towards Matt Mercer. He has been my inspiration in being a dungeon master. I try to do voices for the NPCs, design worlds as interesting as he does, and make my players feel powerful with narrating their actions. Am I the best at that? Heck no. But I do try, and he continues to make me try and improve. So I will say, I got a little agitated, but didn't want to cause a ruckus. The girl I was with, and myself, began to talk to him about why we think he's a good DM, and so on. Jack even came along and joined in, though he thought we were just talking about Mercer and not defending him. When Dom realized that no one shared his opinions, he got pretty pissy and defensive, saying, "I didn't say he was a bad DM, just that..." And then the girl rightly said, "But you said he was crap." That really pissed him off, and he began to make a scene, telling us that we sure love to, quote, "suck Matt Mercer's cock," and how we'd never be as famous as him, and also how we probably don't even know how to play real D&D. At this point, Anne noticed this and promptly kicked him out with the help of the other staff. She apologized and said that he was a big problem. He was caught stealing Magic the Gathering cards more than once, and even sold cheap cards for super high prices to young kids who didn't know any better. He was banned, but the owner gave him one last chance. Needless to say, that chance is gone. Anywho, the girl was deeply just shocked by what happened. I reassured her and said she did nothing wrong, and that whatever that guy was on was not worth worrying about. Eventually, she calmed down, and I gave her her first taste of Dungeons & Dragons. She loved it, and plans to come back, and hopefully play for a full campaign. That's my story. Hope it wasn't too much. Have a great day, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this. I will never understand why some people will hear other people talking about something that they like, only to interject and say whatever that thing is stupid. And I'll also never understand why some people have such a hate boner for Critical Role and Matthew Mercer. Sure, the Mercer effect is a thing, and some people come into D&D expecting a game of a quality like on the show, and don't understand that it's basically Matt's job to run the game, and that they have a whole staff and production crew, not to mention all being professional voice actors. But it's not like it's Matt Mercer's fault that some people think this. In fact, he's even said that he hates the Mercer effect as well. If anything, I'm of the opinion that Critical Role is a good thing, as it gets people interested in the hobby, and the more people that like the hobby, the more it can flourish. Heck, I would be lying if I said that I didn't try to improve on my role-playing skills due to being inspired by Critical Role, much like OP is inspired by Matt Mercer's dungeon mastering. Why can't some people just let people enjoy things? And as far as getting booted and banned from the store, I'm surprised that the owner even gave that dude a second chance after all the theft and preying on young kids with magic cards. At least it sounds like OP and everyone else will not have to deal with that dude anymore though, and here's hoping that OP runs a great campaign. On to the next story. Friend asked me to Dungeon Master so he can flirt, then tries to cancel the game when he gets rejected. By Reddit user Master Figimus. This happened almost 10 years ago, but I was thinking about it today. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition had just come out, and I had just started playing, when a friend of mine asked me if I could run a game for him and a few of his friends. I'd known him for a year or so, but had never met the other players. It was my first time DMing, so I went out and bought a DM screen and then ordered a player's handbook. The plan was a weekly game. We would play at my friend's house, where I met the players, and everyone made characters. It was 4 guys and 1 girl. The players: Warlock, Friend, and Problem. Druid, the girl. Fighter, Paladin, and Rogue. I found out that Warlock was attracted to Druid about an hour into the first session, when he suddenly pivoted the conversation to aggressively press Druid on why she was with her boyfriend in real life. She was taken aback. I did my best to steer this table of strangers back to the game from an awkward silence. Afterward, Druid talked to Warlock about why this was inappropriate. The next session, they walked around town and found quests. All throughout, Warlock flirted with her character and announced that his character found her sexy whenever he could. Druid was a halfling and Warlock was a half-elf, so I said it would be weird, though he just made a joke about her not needing to go on her knees, so I moved on. We didn't meet the following week, and I was starting to get into DMing, so I took the time to really dig into the game and design my first dungeon. I put a lot of effort into a haunted mansion. Then, the day before the 3rd session, Warlock texted me that he has decided to cancel the game. He felt the players were flaky and that he could not play with such unreliable people. I told him that I wanted to at least run the next session because I had worked really hard on it. but he refused to play and said that I couldn't do it without him because it was his game at his house. So I did it without him. We met somewhere else, and one of Druid's friends joined in Warlock's place. They liked my dungeon and had fun, so I decided I'd continue to run the game. It went on for 3 years, and I still play with 2 of the same players today, 10 years later. As for Warlock, I found out later that he had asked Druid out and been shot down, prompting him to try canceling the game. Our friendship more or less ended there. I saw him occasionally for a few more months, but he got super weird and possessive, and the rest is really not related to RPGs. So, Warlock just wanted to use OP to run a game as a vessel to try to get with Druid, and when she shot him down, just cancels the game? That's a pretty big douchebag move to pull on a friend when they spent the time and money on getting the game together. At least OP was able to continue the game without Warlock and have what sounds like a successful campaign, since the game lasted for 3 years. Though, I wonder how Warlock took the news that they were still running the game, or if he found out at all. Maybe that is one of the reasons that OP alluded to as to why their friendship broke up. Also, I have to say that it's a pretty sad way to go about trying to get with someone. Did Warlock really think that he could roleplay his way into a relationship with a girl that was already dating somebody? That is a bit weird. On to the next post. Anyone Can Dog Paddle by Reddit user Alanderos Sunsong. Everyone has that story about that guy, and I suppose I'm no exception. The year was 1991, and I had been playing D&D for about a little over a year by now. So let's begin. Content warning for signs of domestic abuse. A long time ago, 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was still new. At a table, actually a pool table, far, far away. My brother in name and not blood, and one of the closest friends I've ever had was our forever DM, Rick. Mainly, he was stuck in the role because he had the unfortunate gift of being the best DM any of us had ever played under. Rick was imaginative, quick-witted, and able to roll with whatever our band of chaotic morons would do. We had a regular band of idiots who showed up every weekend and played, and we were all working together at the same job site. Those were the halcyon days, when it wasn't if we were playing, but when. Now, to understand the story better, it's important to know more about my dungeon master. He was fair and honest. He would always listen respectfully to the reason why you wanted to do something monumentally stupid, or if you objected to a rule. And to his credit, if you could make a valid reason for why your character tried that, he'd allow it. However, once that decision was over, the final ruling would stand. And generally, that was that. Arguing rarely happened, partially because, while he was mainly a teddy bear, he was also a genetic beast. To put it in context, he was scouted by the Edmonton Eskimos CFL team, while still 16, as a potential offensive lineman. Yeah, that kind of huge. So one of our regular players, Mike, mentioned a new guy none of us really knew who wanted to play. Our dungeon master agreed to run a trial game and asked me to sit in with my mage cleric elf to help balance out the party. It was a chance to game, so yeah, I was in. Enter Dorcas. Obviously not his name, but close enough. Dorcas drug his then-girlfriend along to the game unexpectedly, but Dungeon Master always had some spare NPCs, and they simply fleshed out a quick backstory for her. To her credit, she seemed actually interested in trying this weird little game of dice and math out. Amazingly, she got into the roleplay side of it, and she was a heck of a fun rogue. Dorcas demanded, yes, demanded to play a paladin. so Rick obliged, since this was supposed to be fun, right? So, Mike had his fighter with a swashbuckler kit, Dorcas had his paladin, Girlfriend had her rogue, and I had my mage cleric. We were playing around level 7 in our main campaign, so we started at that level for simplicity's sake. After all, if it went well, we'd be adding them to the game. 1 hour in, and Dorcas has challenged just about every single thing the Dungeon Master has said. Now, I knew my buddy very well, and I also knew the little signs when he was losing his cool, slowly. And while he was the most gentle giant I knew, 2 things pissed him off. Players who wouldn't let things go once the ruling was made, and guys who mistreated women. He hit the lotto in Dorcas. Throughout that hour, Dorcas had been very rude and demeaning to his girlfriend.
"You can't do that."
She absolutely could.
"Don't be stupid. I know better. Do what I say."
He did not know better. This poor girl was browbeaten for every great idea that wasn't his that she tried. While Dungeon Master spoke up occasionally, I tried to calmly explain many times that it was her character and to just let her play how she wants. I was ignored, however. Throughout this, Rick is repeatedly stepping in and trying not to kick him out. And throughout this, I'm watching Rick's little vein in his left temple flare up. That's trigger sign number 1. Then came the river. Swimming in those days was a skill, one you used your precious and rare non-weapon proficiency to buy. We always took swimming, as it was an unwritten rule in our games that Dungeon Master would enforce it. Both newcomers were warned during character creation about this. So, we need to flee the foes chasing us and see a boat on the other side of a quick-moving river. Unarmored as I am, I dive in and start swimming, as does Mike with enchanted leather armor with a small penalty, but he makes it. Girlfriend with padded armor, and Dorcas wearing half-plate. Oof. Dungeon Master calls for swimming checks. Dorcas rolls and says that he succeeded. We all look at his die roll as we rolled open table, and my math club brain can't understand how he could possibly succeed, as I know he didn't take swimming as, and I quote,
"That's a stupid waste of a proficiency,"
was heard during character creation, despite my warning. Calmly, Dungeon Master asks how that was possible, and Dorcas asserts,
"Everyone can swim. It's an innate ability. Anyone can dog paddle."
DM responds,
"You're saying that your character, that cannot swim, wearing 80 pounds of ill-fitting steel, hops into a racing river and dog paddles across? Yeah, no. You sink like a stone. Start rolling constitution checks for drowning."
This begins almost a half hour of bitching and moaning, the likes I've never seen since. Toddlers would have been impressed. I see Dungeon Master grabbing the edge of the pool table, and I can hear wood creaking from the grip. That's trigger sign number 2. That little vein is now beating like Animal from the Muppets on a drum. Then the worst happens. Girlfriend tells him to calm down, and his hand goes backwards for a second, like he was preparing a backhand. Uh-oh. I look over. Dungeon Master is rising to his feet like Mount Doom, looking to erupt. I grab Dorcas, as I'm 6 foot and was about 220 back then, and physically drag him upstairs, all 130 pounds soaking wet of him. I quickly grab his coat and figuratively toss him and his shoes outside and tell him to run if he enjoys walking. Girlfriend follows, unfortunately. She was great, and pleads for him to just go. He actually started to get pissed at me until he hears the trot of giant feet ascending from the basement and sees what is basically a 5th edition barbarian in a full rage coming through the door behind me. I'm futilely trying to hold Rick back when I hear unshod feet slapping on the driveway. He ran barefoot in a northern Alberta Canadian winter, around -40 Celsius, down the block to his car, and he was never seen again. We gave his girlfriend a drive home as an apology. We were 16 and 17 at the time, and didn't know how to handle domestic situations like that. So we just told her that she could do better, and invited her back to play if she liked. I heard a rumor that she joined one of the local games in town with a new boyfriend, so I hope she got out okay. Man, yet another new player attempting to join a game that just can't seem to make a good impression. But this was much, much worse than just turning on the party in-game. By the sounds of it, DM was pretty lenient when it came to players doing certain things in-game, but would have final say and not argue. And it seems like the only thing that Dorcas did was argue. Then to try to reason that he could make it across the river without swimming proficiency while wearing full plate by doggy paddling is pretty dumb. But the dumbest thing Dorcas did was raise his hand to his girlfriend when she told him to calm down. Thankfully for Dorcas, OP had the mind to boot him out of the house before the DM could get his hands on him, so he could flee like the coward he was without his shoes on. You just know that Dorcas would hit his girlfriend, because that was obviously a muscle memory type thing when he did it. And hopefully, the rumors of his girlfriend joining another game with a new boyfriend were true. Let's move on to the next post. That time I failed to lockpick a door because the Dungeon Master thought no rogues equals no passable DC. By Reddit user IDG Captain Russia. Hey y'all. Thought I'd share this, as it's something my friends and I have turned into an inside joke and meme. This is a short and much more light-hearted tale. It's from a Pathfinder 1st Edition game that I had since left, and happened about a year ago. I'm playing a kobold alchemist who is the party's skill monkey, scout, and effective rogue. We're in a dungeon, and in this dungeon, and the previous one, the Dungeon Master kept having us run into, quote, stuck doors that we could only bash down with strength checks. Eventually, the Dungeon Master gets the hint that we don't like wasting time on doors that have only one solution, so he begins to introduce locked doors. However, despite my character having locksmith, i.e. thieves' tools, made for them very early on in the campaign, I try to open a door and roll a nat 20. 27 on my disable device check, and am told that the door was not unlocked. Now, at the time, I didn't know that skill checks are not auto successes if you nat 20, but this wasn't like the door to the King's Royal Chamber that would warrant such a high DC. These were old, decrepit, rotten wooden doors in a 1,000+ year old tomb of a precursor race. And what's worse is after I fail the check, the fighter walks up and bashes the door down on his first try. Needless to say, the whole party lambasted the Dungeon Master over this, as it clearly was BS. To which the Dungeon Master replied, "Sorry, I thought there wasn't a rogue in the party, so the DC didn't need to be passable." Yeah, he completely forgot that I had locksmith tools made early in the campaign, so I could do rogue stuff. Anyways, later doors had fair DCs, and we stopped running into so many stuck doors as well. This one encounter has left me with an annoying, yet funny story that I like to meme around with. If it's not my inability to pick an old lock, it's a joke about how many stuck doors we think a dungeon will have. Definitely a bit on the more lighthearted side of D&D Horror Stories. Though my question is, if the Dungeon Master could see that the players didn't like so many stuck doors, then why replace them with locked ones if he had no intention of letting anyone in the party pass the lock's DC? Well, at least OP has a kind of funny story to remember, and has an inside joke with their friends when they play. let's move on to today's final story. Look Out Below by Reddit user MegaGem88. Had a new guy join our session tonight. Had snake-like features, but didn't think he would live up to his appearance. We found a dungeon, and finally discovered a hatch that let us in deeper. We were discussing how to get down, and even had some familiars check out the space below. It was about 5 feet wide, and a 120-foot drop, and had 3 feet of water at the bottom. Just then, Snake Guy chimed in.
"Oh, hey guys, I have Featherfall. I've got you."
The only catch was that we needed to be in mid-jump to cast the spell. We had some rope, but thought, oh heck, why not? It would be a quicker way down. So, my Triton Warlock and our Kenku Cleric linked arms and took a literal leap of faith. Then, the snake turned away and lit a cigarette and let us fall to our doom. 0 HP and bodies broken, we were in the bottom of the drain. Luckily, we had a bard with healing word, but our HP was still dangerously low. Then, our barbarian exploded out of game, spewing the guy's bad rep, and let him know that he ruined the game for everyone. All I could do was stare at my character sheet, low on spells and HP. We were one door away from the boss, and had just woken him up. Things were about to get messy. Well, that is a great way to make a first impression. Offer the players help, and then just let them fall. What reason would that party have to then allow that character to continue adventuring with them narratively? And why would the players even want you to play the game with them after that? I mean, the dude straight up pulled patches from Dark Souls. Though, later in the comments, OP stated that the Dungeon Master went easy on them and cut the damage in half, so it would not be instant death for OP and the other player. And then had a talking to the offending player about how that wasn't a cool thing to do. Apparently, OP thinks that this was some form of retaliation since the Dungeon Master didn't let a spell do what the player wanted it to do, or something. And apparently, they are keeping him on as a player, just with a warning. So if OP ends up posting another story, we'll know how that went. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.